All right, ladies and gents, monthly trading recap for the month of September here. Another month in the red at 312 bucks to the downside. We never want to be going in that red direction, but we're coming off of a $390, $400-ish red month from August. So going in at least a little bit of semi-correct direction. Of course, you never want to be taking these red months, and I never want to take a single red trade whatsoever, but they got to happen. And that's the reality of that. I can't be perfect. And continuing to grow in my mindset of that as a trader and understanding how I define myself and how I view my own psyche and not attaching myself to these trades and the P&L aspect and every single side of that, but also carrying along the realization, the other perspective alongside of that too of, hey, if we're taking a loss, we got to understand why that happened and rid it from the system. We want to be continually fine tuning that win rate and going as hard and as close to perfection as possible. It's a never ending quest, and that's pretty much what we're all here for. So excited to get after it. We got a lot to get into for this monthly trading recap. We'll go ahead and start off with monthly goal coming into the month. August was the goal was of having fun, and then coming into this month, I really stepped off of that or piggybacked off of that and defined it more as being loose in the trade. I always equate that to those kids playing soccer in Brazil with like a bottle cap or something, or wherever. Pick your analogy for that one too, but that's just kind of what my mind always goes to of just no regard for what we in America, what Western civilization thinks as real problems of, stressing and fretting about, oh, this stock price is going to do this and this. But the perspective in all of this and everything that we're watching flashing lights on a screen, and then that somehow potentially determines our day or our life. And I know I especially getting that too and feeling it more and more that I can very easily let that define who I am for whatever reason that is that I'm not doing more outside of my life that I can find vindication or life in itself, or just so many different facets in that way too. But keeping that grounded perspective that the opportunity to be able to do this sit in front of a computer I don't wear pants to go to work. That's freaking amazing, right? It's not a lot of people. There's very few people that get to do that on this earth. So everything in perspective, and that's always what I have to harp on myself to through every loss, through every gain. Keep that perspective in mind, that level head of understanding the time frame that I'm working in, too, that it's not about the individual day. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That's a famous Tim Sykes quote of, he stole that before, but it is 100% a marathon and not a sprint. I certainly want to finish the marathon as soon as I can, but I'm going to take my time and continue to take one step, one day after another. So let's get into it. That was the monthly goal for this monthly goal was being loose. Coming back off of that August monthly goal of having fun, this month I wanted to expand on that a little bit more and say, okay, I want to be loose. I want to be totally free and not tense at the computer, just physically and even mentally, to be able to say, oh, I'm willing to take a loss on this. I'm willing to experiment on this trade to see if it goes a little bit more this way or doesn't go a little bit more this way. I think the thing that I missed on that this month was understanding when to be free, when to be loose, to not take the trade. In a sense of, I always look at the being loose of, oh, I'm experimenting, I'm going more, taking more trades and doing more things. But I think there's definitely a line for that for me too as well, when it's becomes far too much. And I can't be trading 5 tickers at once, because then it just loses its value of trying to learn from anything I'm doing in that time frame, versus trading one trade, trading 2 trades in the morning, and maybe doing something a little bit differently than I haven't done in the past, or taking, a few more, taking smaller entries instead of when I would normally take one entry, different little things like that too. That was the mentality coming into this month. And can't say that I A+ absolutely nailed that, but I think it's just the process of me too. It's a challenge for myself to change the entire mindset. It's not just going to be oh, hey, you met the grade today too. It's an entire personality change too that I'm trying to invoke in myself by putting that monthly goal on of, you got to be loose. You got to be free. You got to be willing to, I love the Tim Sykes mentality that he has and everything of just how loose and how willing he is to take that loss, and the trade does not affect him whatsoever. And I will not say that one single trade will define me or corrupt me, or if I take one big red trade on the day, especially looking at this very first day of the month, that hard trade on ABVC, which kind of did taint a little bit of the rest of the month for the P&L, but we'll get into that on the stats side. But something like that too, but it's hard because it's such a hard P&L, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I took another loss, or I took another big loss P&L trade. And I'm glad too that I look back and compare myself a little bit in that sense to other traders or other losing traders, of how they'll then equate that to, oh, that's a whole month's wages, or that's a whole nother weeks of trading, or whatever the equation is at that point too. I've never done that, and I've never been a part of that too. And I think that's a great motivating cause for me too, that there is no equation anymore for me in that head. When I take a loss, when I take a win, especially to both sides of the trade, that when I get a nice winner, I'm like, oh, that's like 3 days delivering food in a row, right? Or that's just, any single factor. Or you can feel like, oh, if I get this good trade, then I can buy this one thing that I'm looking at. To get that out of your mind, this has totally got to be a video game in a sense too. And realizing, not going YOLO, not going absolutely crazy, keeping yourself to that line. But this is really, I don't even really consider this money that's in my trading account really a part of my net worth in a sense, or whatever accounting work I do in that, because it's just almost, it is video game money. And that's kind of how I have to think of that, and detach that attachment to money, and how we especially like to view that monetary value and the value we place on ourselves. That ties back into how we view that trade in itself. The same thing of, oh, if I'm taking a loss, then it's the difference of taking a loss and how that affects you personally versus the actual money loss itself and how that affects you personally. I think the money side of it himself, I'm totally fine with and vindicating. I think actually the bigger side, which is a little bit scary too, when I was taking bigger size losses because I was absolutely stupid trading that way in the beginning, it wasn't as hard to take those like $300 loss, that one big, I take a $500 loss at one point of just, I think that was my biggest loss ever. But I just had to go in this mindset of, that pushed me even harder to just say, okay, that's done, that's over with. That was a big loss, I understand that, but it's worrying and fretting over that big loss anymore is not going to help. We got to focus on what went wrong, go to the next one. So that's another thing I got to think of too, that even I'm thinking of right now, that the little tiny loser trades, it's just the little tiny paper cuts that ruin me time and time again, because they don't prompt me to have a hard change internally, but they just continue to add up over and over and over again. And they don't make me focus harder on the winners, and they don't make me focus up more on the losers in a sense too. So it's that line of walking of how far do I go ish on the YOLO line of the position size that I'm using on these trades too, so that I feel it enough internally to say, okay, this was wrong, or this was totally right. You need to be sizing up more. Why aren't you doing that? And I think the overall message for them this month, if everything else gets washed away, was got to be sizing up more on the winners, and got to be respecting position size more on the less probable trades. In a sense, we got to be respecting, if I'm taking a bigger position size on a trade that I feel is more probable and it's not working, I got to be able to get out of that trade too. I cannot be taking bigger losses on the month than my biggest wins. So we'll get into stats on that one too. A little bit of a long-winded intro on that one, kind of all over the place, but let's get into, I want to talk over the highlighted trades for me on the month, starting with GSAT, which was the second of this month of September. Lower floater, or it was actually a huge floater, and former runner. Surprised me that it ran that first day on, I think, on News Catalyst, and had that nice perk day that was still red on big volume, then pulled back a little bit more these next 2 days. Just kind of solid. And all of these trades do, I go into more detail, of course, in the individual daily trading recap. If I need that, if I'm watching in the past, or if anybody else is watching this one, go to that daily trading recap video to see the total overview, in-depth breakdown of this trade. But you get this nice little basing, perfect level holding here of this 186 kind of area. Then you get this perking in this pre-market day too. So this still on my watch list coming into today. Then you see it's getting action to that whole dollar level of 2. We see it break to the upside in the pre-market with volume right specifically at that level. This is on the 5-minute. But even at then too, you can kind of see it on the volume chart here. When that 2 level comes, volume comes in to push it to the upside, which is a great entry point for me too, especially when you're looking for that recurling effect. And when it's holding these levels well, you have an obvious risk level at this 186 point. If it's breaking that, then I know that I don't think the trade is going to work from there. If it does, then we got to adjust for that from the future. But for now, that's an easy point to see that this thing's not dying off hard. It's just kind of slowing and holding still if you're looking at it on a more intradaily perspective. It's a great trade to the upside in that one. In the pre-market, does get a little bit of pullback there into market hours, but even during market hours, it does have some continuation if you're willing to play for it to that side as well too, which I believe I did. I forget how specifically I traded this one. I think I was actually out by market hours, just saying, hey, when the money's there, I'm certainly willing to take it. So that was an awesome one on GSAT. CEI, oh my gosh. Let's look at the 14th here. I wanted to look at, besides what it would continue on to do for the next few weeks, the rest of this month here, this absolute craziness. Awesome opportunity, what I felt on the 14th, that may be actually a little bit of a fortune telling kind of predictor for what happened initially on the kind of fake out short squeeze to the upside, how this thing continued to keep running. We get this move. So even looking at the daily here, this trade is based on the daily. We get this first kind of red day put in after it's had this long multi-day successive run up, and you get that little bit of exhaustive volume candle day here on this day. Day succeeding that one, following it on the next Monday, that would look like it would be, had a red day, a little bit of a sell-out consolidation, but I just wasn't buying it. The volume for me wasn't there. It actually got bought up, the same type of thing too. And even looking back at this now, it kind of reflects a little bit what it did on the next few days when it was so much more volatile, so much more volume coming on this one for even bigger opportunity. But that sell-off gets bought immediately back up, and there was just no volume, no amount of panic to suggest that this thing was going to die off and continue for an easy first red day short. And looking for any catalyst of shorts getting squeezed, trying to play that specific trade. So I got a nice entry based off of this 145 level that also kind of established in that after hours from the previous day. Originally came into this one with a thesis of 1.5 as that $0.50 level being a key area. I think it had some amount of inflection there on the previous day as well. But an awesome one that really worked. An easy opportunity to see too, as we're playing it off it 3 times. It's still holding above VWAP, just continually testing. Get a nice volume push to the upside past that breakout point. Price moves away decently. This was a slower mover in the run up beforehand. So you kind of had to be willing to know the characteristic of the stock itself while you were trading it, but it did pretty much have moved away from price quickly. It looked like it was faking out, but immediately bought back, continuing to test new highs, push new levels, an easy opportunity to sell into to the long side. And still, and I was even holding through this VWAP hold here into the afternoon to that 1.8 point. I forget, specifics. I would go to the daily trading recap video itself for the exact breakdown of what I did, but great opportunity on that day. That was an absolutely slam dunk pre-market preparation trade that you could come into today too. And then reading it off of, I was so prepped for that 1.5 level to say, hey, that's, if it breaks that, then I definitely want to be in this trade. But how different of a trade this would have been had I stuck to that 1.5 level, saying, oh, I'm not going to get in this one until that 1.5 is hit, versus seeing, okay, hey, 145 is kind of putting up a little bit of a fight, and it's an obvious level here. Volume is coming to step in. We're testing it 3 times to holding a VWAP, and volume has come to shove this thing to the upside. That might be a good little entry point too. So now when that 1.5 point actually comes, I've got much more of a cushion to kind of sit back and just read whatever's going to happen, let it play out, let the actual trend play out rather than being faked out because I'm so focused on the individual cent price action. Let that trade play out, and you get a nice opportunity to the upside to easily liquidate into for that move. And then, whatever it did, the rest of this whole run-up was just absolutely one for the history books for this month on CEI. But the 14th was an awesome trade specifically for me. Zevo on the 20th, I also wanted to mention. This chart, just a ridiculous daily low floater. Look at the 20th here for the month. Pause that action. Big news, I think, coming into the pre-market today too, for whatever it was. And you can kind of call this is a little bit of a different variation of the dip and rip I traded that I don't really know if I was so wise to not trade this pre-market, which would be my only hit or looking back on this trade specifically, because I was in and out on this thing during this point in time so many times. And I think I took a little bit of paper cuts, a little bit of losses, convincing myself once again too how many times I've talked about this of, it's that FOMO protection. That if I'm in it with a super small position size and it goes to the upside where I think it's going to go, because, watching this, you're seeing basing price action, and then you get that little perk to a new little regional high here at this point. You're thinking, that's a nice opportunity. Could reclaim VWAP here, could test above 7 during pre-market at least too. So that little bit of FOMO gets appeased when I take a little bit of a position size. If I take a 10 share position size in that, then I can say, okay, sweet, I saw that move. Now I'm not fighting myself in market hours of saying, I missed this move then, I'm going to miss this move there, blah, blah, blah. It's just, in doing that so many times now, I got to get rid of it. The paper cut losses are what's just continually kind of again, like I mentioned in the introduction, of just tick and tick and tick and tick away at me and shift me off of what should be my main focus, which is the actual trade itself too. And I know that's going to come as a result of maybe saying that now I got to put all my chips in one basket, and the mentality at that point becomes, this is the trade that it's got to be, and I can't just live in that little fantasy land of, oh, I'm in the stock and I'm ready for the one trade, but then I'm convincing myself that I'm not so hyper focused or just getting more tense because I'm waiting for that one specific moment. I think the better trades are going to come from the result of me focusing on one specific thing and not trying to play in and out. And then because I'm getting so distracted from that point, I'm getting so thrown off of trying to read the individual candle price action for that movement versus what I should be looking at is the whole potato for that trade in itself. So either way, this was a great little kind of semi dip and rip, if you want to call it that too. We're holding these we get this push under VWAP during pre-market after the nice spike, holding some kind of levels here around 5.5-ish, this little range under VWAP, and then you get a perfect dip within 2 minutes out of the market open, which is still really in that sketchy kind of algo time frame, but then it fails to really break this level. And that's, for me, this was an easy risk level to set to as I was scaling in heavily during this point in time for a long trade, which really I don't know where I got that data or where I got that feeling for that, but I got another awesome entry too that really should have been the one specific entry point for this trade as it's holding that 5.65-ish range. If it broke that, then immediately I knew I was going to be out, but it just wanted that quick reversal, smack back to the upside of VWAP, and easy, immediate point to sell into, scaling out anywhere above close to that $7 range. It was an awesome trade on that one. And then just kind of sketchy, just holding. I think there was a lot of overhead on this one on the day for some warrants and offerings that were found in the filings, and then just had trouble holding those levels and failed into the afternoon. But that was an awesome one right away in the morning session on Zevo. And then LPTX, the other one I wanted to mention, on the 22nd. Let's give her a look-see. This was a failed offering slammer, which is a trade pattern that I'm kind of been more interested in lately. I think I've had a pretty high win rate on these ones when they come out with the offering after a nice little run up here. I forget the float on this one specifically for how it created this run up, but you get the offering release right at the close that just tanks the stock immediately, but it doesn't tank it so hard for what the run up was. You know, we're tanking down to 2.7, 2.8-ish area. Comparing that to what the daily is, it's still within the time frame of what that previous day was, and it's not a lot of volume coming in that was tanking that already. So it's just kind of like algos hitting it immediately, or easy sells of trying to panic out immediately as that news comes of, oh, okay, right, yeah, offerings coming out, don't want to be in this anymore as a long, trying to hold this overnight. You know, sucks, whatever, but I'll cut the loss as it's there. But then it gets bought up, and it just starts to hold a little bit more. Then we get into this pre-market and it holds a little bit more, and then you get volume coming in. I think this was the point that I was scaling into the trade itself. Begins to hold a little bit more, and volume's coming there to support, which is a key factor for me in every trade, but especially this one, that volume's got to come back in to keep holding this trade to the upside and continue to put the pressure on the shorts that are trying to jump in on this one as the easy, predictable trade that, hey, it's got an offering out, it's got to go down. Nobody wants to be in this one when it has this offering out, when it has so much overhead, especially. So we get this VWAP hold here. Great little individual trade on this one, but again, should have been sized up way more for the conviction on this trade. This was a great little 10% move here. Trade to the upside that I was surprised even too on that day that it failed so hard and came back down immediately, but it's really whatever. This was another great lesson that you take the money when you can, not when you have to, and you don't try to drag things out or extend them for anything they aren't. This was the move that I was wanting to see. This was everything that I was wanting to sell into, and I took it while it was there, and I didn't try to play games with it. And it respected that too. It showed that that was the correct pattern to do for that trade on that day. So let's get into some stats now. Let's just pull up SPY here for Funzy to look at while we get into some stats. Win rate for this month, 28% compared to last month, which was a 32% win rate. Overall, in the history of my trades, we're looking at roughly like a 34% win rate. So this month coming in just a little bit under that. I think sizing down way more this month for what I was trading, and we took less trades this month too, especially what I'll get into. The average return per trade for this month, $4.74 to the downside for each individual trade, which was expected what would happen per trade on that. And then August was a little bit less, actually. I would lose $4.30 per trade on that. And overall, averaging out roughly around like $3 loss per trade overall. Average return percentage on that, I was averaging per trade -1% per trade today through every single one. August was 1.2% to the downside, and overall averaging like 0.01% to the downside per trade as of right now. Biggest winner this month, $79. Not really great to see. August, my biggest win was $104 compared to now. Biggest loss this month was that $142 loss on ABVC right at the start of the month, which tainted a lot of everything. And then biggest loser last month was $97, which was less than the biggest winner, which I got to be keeping myself accountable to. So yeah, a little bit tainted by that ABVC start of the month too for what it was, because the next biggest loss trade was like $58, and that was even on close to $2,000 position size on RNAZ, I believe that stat was. So, factoring that in, understanding that, hey, I can't have bigger losses than my biggest winners, but just one outlier can kind of change that data a little bit. 91 trades last month in August versus 66 this month. I'm kind of averaging, it's a little bit wonky for my overall data, but I'm kind of averaging right around that 50 trades per month type. So maybe a little bit on the high side. And always it's just a little bit different through my TraderSync view than what I consider an actual trade to when I would do those little tiny FOMO protection trades of this $10 position size, or the super, super small kind of starter feeler trades that if I end up cutting them because they go against me, then it counts as a trade. Those are different a little bit, whatever, than what I consider an actual trade. But I need to be trading less too. Focusing on, I think, getting rid of a little bit more of those protection trades is going to be good for me in the future. Hold time for winners this month was an average of like 46 minutes, whereas losers I was holding for a lot longer, to 2 hours was the average, compared to August, where I was holding my winners longer than my losers. Winners in August were 33 minutes. The losers were 28 minutes on average. I should see what the overall is on that. Okay, so it works out to be overall for my total trading career trades, like an hour for each winner and losses. That's averaged out over time. So that's a lot of trades going into that data. So kind of holding a little bit underneath that, what my average has been too, but I'll take that data for what it's worth. Going into more of the daily perspective, I traded the most on Wednesdays, and the biggest win rate was actually on Wednesdays. That ABVC first trade was on a Wednesday, so tainted that data a little bit. Second highest win rate day was Tuesdays, and then Mondays coming in third, but Thursdays were the worst. So I definitely have to keep an eye on those and start holding myself accountable more on those Thursdays. August was kind of the same story. Thursdays was also one of the worst win rate days, and Fridays were pretty sucky as well then too. So I think more to the end of the week that I need to especially start keeping a better hold on myself and keeping myself accountable to what I prepare come into the market day with, versus coming off of that weekend super excited and all this energy ready to start trading, whereas maybe at the end of the week I start fading a little bit. Got to keep myself on top of that a little bit more. Average loss for this month is really not that bad. I'm down 5% for loss, down 5% on average loss for this month, which is not bad in my opinion. I mean, that's what I should be holding myself accountable to, is looking for those, cutting around like 5% loss on average and looking for 10% gain to the upside. So risking that is at 2-1 for what that is. Obviously, and it's all really comes down to, like I mentioned again, for what the whole focus for this month should be. Got to be sizing up on the winners, going so slam dunk hard on what I feel the higher probability trades are when they are there. Not if they're necessarily going to produce the most volatility. The volatility doesn't matter. If I think the pattern and the price action is going to be there, then that's what matters. I think I kid myself a little bit too when I get so distracted by the pretty pigs of the big percentage movers during pre-markets that they're just so volatile and there's so much volume in them that I'm going, oh, okay, well, this is the time I get to size in with bigger position size. No, I should be, if it's a more speculative trade, I should be respecting that, obviously, in the position size itself. And vice versa with these highlighted trades that I mentioned, that I should be just absolutely slam dunking those, or slamming those with my full account size, with getting into my day trades account even too, if I feel that active in them, that they have the opportunity to go there. That is going to be the key. Because that win rate can, if we get that win rate to coincide along that, if that risk factor is there, then that's all we need. That's the plain math that's there to see. It's the win rate because my average loss and average win rate or average profit look is there. That's what we got to hold ourselves accountable to. So let's go back to. Okay, now getting into more of what I wrote down for the journal on this month. We started off this month with that temporary rule of like $500 max per day per ticker position size limit, meaning because I was coming off of so many of those little dip and rip fake out paper cuts that I was just getting in and out, in and out, in and out, wasting away my cash account trading opportunity and just taking those little tiny small paper cuts when I got to be focused with the situation I have now that I'm under PT, have that cash account trading, that I got to be more focused on taking the one trades as they are there, because that's the opportunities that I have. That's the capabilities that I have right now. I worked well within the first week, even though the P&L didn't necessarily say so. And I think I strayed away a little bit more from that too, as I was getting more into substantial base trades and pulling myself away from the kind of sketchier starter feeler positions that aren't me as a trader, especially too. I said on the 7th of this month that I definitely need to be adjusting what my definition is of a single. And that was a big thing too, that of course, as my risk factor right now says, that I was always continually looking for that 10% on the upside and holding myself to that 5% on the downside. That needs to be adjusted to as I'm looking at what the market is saying, that, hey, we're not always going to be giving you 10% winners as an average, as a baseline. Because I was coming from that hot 2020 market, it was just like, it wasn't even considered a trade unless it was above like 50%, right? And I was looking for 10% as a minimum. Whereas now that's got to be so different too. Even a 5% trade to the upside is an awesome-ish move if the risk reward is there too. But I can't just go in blindly saying, oh, I'm not selling one single share until it hits 10% too. That is so blinding. And I'm still working myself out of that a little bit more and adjusting that accordingly. Now as I'm trading more off of those getting off of the stupid little starter feeler trades that I'm talking about again, and looking for the more substantial based trades too, and being willing to take the profits as they are there and not holding myself just, oh, it's got to be 10%, it's got to be there, because I think that's kind of boxed myself in a few too many times and turned some winners into losers. Yeah, and too, I mentioned the same thing, that in these past few months, I've never run into the problem where I've cut my winners so outrageously short that I looked at it at the end of the day and thought, oh my gosh, I sold this way too soon. Why the heck did I sell it there? There was way more room to the upside. Never had that in these past few months. I think I've had that maybe a few times in the hot, crazy 2020 market when I really didn't have a full context of what I was doing. But I should be learning from that too, that I've kind of been picking tops well when I used to be selling like my first half. That's really what I should be selling my entire position. I was kind of cutting my profits in half at that point because I was thinking, oh, it's holding well. I'd be stupid to cut my full position here because I think there's plenty more room to the upside, when in reality, that was the point to sell into. And I knew that too. That's why I was taking off safe profits at that point. But I think I can certainly get into that more too. And I can err on that side far more often. I think that's a far greater problem to have, of cutting your winners short way too soon as compared to turning those good winners into more or less break even-ish, or just half of what your position size should say, what that P&L should be. If it's a 10% move to the upside and I sell half of the position there, and then I wait until it comes all the way back and I'm still blinded thinking, oh, I could come back to the upside, but then I end up breaking as it's just about to cut my entry price, that turns a 10% trade into a 5% trade. I'm cutting my profits literally in half, when maybe I was already scaling up at that point for what my position size I thought should be. Whereas no, you got to take the profits when they're there. That was the trade, and then you just kind of miss it. You're thinking there was way more when it really wasn't. So adjusting to that too. From the 6th to the 9th, we also had family coming in on the month that were sleeping over, and they were kind of messing around with me around the morning sessions too. So took that week off a little bit, at least in position size, and knew I shouldn't be trading so hard, but still kind of did a little bit too. But that was on the 6th to the 9th. And I was taking days off way early at that point too. Pretty much as soon as that morning session was done, maybe even a little bit sooner, I was away from the computer screen. Going into the 14th and the 22nd were really the awesome highlighted days that I wanted to mention. We had CEI and AEI on the 14th, and I forget what the 22nd was, of these two days here, APRN and LPTX. Go over those specific charts themselves on the daily trading recap, but let's look at back to last month. Just wanted those highlights those days for two awesome trades on each of those days that kept me in a great mentality, coming into the market day with great mentality, and then capitalizing on them when the opportunities were there, not trying to force anything that wasn't. And then, man, I wrote here as well too that this month seemed to just absolutely fly by. I felt like when we were already halfway through the month, it felt like a blitz. Totally caught me off guard. I was like, oh my gosh, we're on the 20th of September almost. This month is almost over. Give me the thingy. Stupid. It was, yeah, totally seemed to fly by for some reason. Don't really know why, if there was anything else to equate to that feeling, but coming into that week of the 20th, I felt I started off with such an awesome mindset. And this day ended up being a red day, but this day had the Zevo trade on the 20th there of what an awesome percentage move to the upside was. Also one of the bigger gap down days on the market that happened on that 20th. And I came in just with the perspective of thinking and mullinating over the entire weekend of what I want to be doing and how I wanted to come at the market too, which is totally great. And of course, didn't reflect itself in the greatest light in the P&L, but I think carrying alongside also what I mentioned too with the stats for the daily too, that's great and wonderful to do that on the Mondays, and I need to be doing that for what my win rate says, what the P&L, if the trades are there, especially at the start of the week, but then also carrying that into the rest of the week, focusing on that even harder on the Thursdays, on the Fridays, where I didn't have a green day this entire month on Thursday, or apparently Monday either, but 2 trading days on Monday. Focusing on those Thursdays, got to carry that every single day too. And I think it's just a mental shift. It's not necessarily just on Thursdays that, oh, okay, now I got to focus more because it's Thursday. It's today is a day that ends in Y. So I got to be more focused on it, right? Yeah, I'm talking about, just trading more on substance. And I'll go into what my goal is for next month. But I would love to place the blame on the dip and rippers this month for kind of how I destroyed myself, or why I would experience a little bit of downness just emotionally too, of, I'm taking my win rate's kind of suffering. I'm just not striking any amount of luck too for how I'm trading these ones. And I just continue to hold myself to those dip and rips, but the dip and rips weren't the problem. If you take out ABVC, especially too for what was a very large position size for that one, if you take out ABVC, I was profitable a month on dip and rips. My win rate was actually pretty decent. I think just maybe a little around that 30% mark. So we obviously want to see that higher, especially if we're talking about a specific setup in itself for the pattern to trade too. I want to have a higher hit rate than just 30%. But I can't blame those. I can't blame dip and rips to just say, I shouldn't be trading dip and rips whatsoever. I'm not going to trade dip and rips going into the next month. The dip and rips were the problem. It was just like they did what they did. It's not like they were going 100% and I was just totally missing them. It was just like they would do what they would want to do in that day. And there's the different factors of how you read into that, if they're going to work, or how you trade that, cut it potentially if it's showing signs that it's not going to break to the upside of VWAP. I know Chris is great at that too, of not limiting himself to that 10% move, or forcing the trade to have to either be there or you cut it until it shows it's going to loss at your stop of low a day for that specific pattern. So adjusting to that too, and I have to go forward that I really wanted to, and that's what I thought coming into this one before I looked at the data to say that, the dip and rips are definitely going out. That's where I feel the problem is with this note, is the data does not say that whatsoever. So kind of exciting to see too, but also keeping in perspective too that I got to be getting a higher win rate on the dip and rips, or maybe I should be putting my focus somewhere else on a higher probability trade that's been showing, at least for those. I think new rule set, at least for me, similar to that temporary rule, that $500 intraday ticker position size limit. I think going forward, I want to say, if I have not predefined a trading plan for a stock, an individual ticker before market open, then I am disallowed from trading that ticker for the rest of the entire day too. And I think relating that to the 30th, this last day here for CEI, that trade I took, those weren't bad trades in a sense. It wasn't chasey. It wasn't so overblown position size, just like trying to like get a C green and buy green. It was a little bit like just a little tiny hit of before I pushed the button that I thought, okay, this looks like a good level here. I could buy it to the upside. But it wasn't so premeditated that I came into the day looking specifically to do that too. My best trades on the month came in when I was prepared for that trade almost the day before. GSAT, especially when it started spiking, especially at $2, it's a great trade. CEI, 100%, Zevo, LPTX, all these highlight trades came into the day with knowing what I was going to do on the day with that ticker too, and just letting that ruminate, marinate is the word I'm looking for in my head of what that trade was going to do. And that's loves how my brain loves to work for those trades. And I just get so screwed over and over and over again. I think I've talked about this one on the 30th too, of how I almost hold the trades when I don't have any idea what I'm going to do on them today, but I just kind of buy green, see green, think I'm seeing something and put a few shares at it and then end up taking it for a stupid loss because it was a stupid trade to begin with. I hold those ones a little bit closer to myself because now that loss isn't necessarily just on my trading plan, that I can disconnect from me and then evaluate, review, learn from, and change and adjust. It's almost like when I take those little tiny stupid losses, it's on me. And then it's harder to detach that understanding that it's just a trade, stop doing that versus, oh, it must be my site that's wrong. It must be something that I'm seeing that isn't correct on what I should see. And that's a harder one to deal with or to let that sit too, because now it's based on emotions. Now it's based on me versus what it should be in just a trading plan. It's just numbers. It's just data that I'm trading that I have to adjust and play with versus me in itself too, which I think it's a great mention and totally great point too, for even harder conviction point for me to do. Stop taking those stupid little starter feeler trades. Stop taking the little tiny paper cuts. Come into market hours with a better plan on what you're trying to trade, or then don't trade at all. It's better to be on the sidelines than taking an entire red month here just continually over and over and over again. In a sense too, I think there's some factors of that too, from what I'm learning of this one, that I need to have that sting. I need to have that little bit of hurt to really learn from, but also comparing how much sting can you possibly take in that sense. So talk about the 30th of, this was just a perfect epitome day for when I don't have anything hard coming into the market and I see CEI is awesome, great mover on that day too, and then convince myself that, oh, that's a good trading opportunity because it's got the big dollar volume, the big percentage movers, other big players are in this one. But the difference is they have hard set trading plans coming into the day too, and they're adjusting with it on the fly, similar to what I did on CEI for the 14th. Whereas I was just looking at it like, ooh, green, it could go up, and then just buying it. It can't happen. It's not a solid trading plan. It's not a solid trading career to base yourself around too. So that's got to be adjusted going forward. So going into next month's goal for month of October, the goal is got to trade on substance. And I think I'm going to carry that rule set as far and as hard as I can and maybe make tiny, minute adjustments on it, or maybe even limit myself to, hey, we can't trade the first 10, 15 minutes of market open. You are disallowed. If TD Ameritrade allows that option, that do not let me push the button for the first 10, 15 minutes of market open. I gotta be doing more work, I think, in after hours, scanning charts, doing my research before the market day, to whereas especially to when I'm coming up from the market hours, when I'm almost, as soon as I wake up, then I'm looking at the screens going to the market hours, and it's the haziness, it's the not 100% fully mentally there yet, how my emotions, how my stressors are dealt with my body because I'm not, fully getting that hard 10 hour sleep that I know my body needs at that point too. So I think I got to do more work coming into making it easier for myself to doing all the prep work, all the preparation beforehand. So now I don't even have to think. I just see and do, getting myself to that point. And the stats especially tell that too, that 9 o'clock time frame is my biggest losing time frame across the board overall, especially this month, the month of August as well too. This when the money's usually meant to be made, of course, right away at the market open, but that's, for me, it's still when my money is lost. The biggest amount of money is lost too. That's what you can equate that to, that we got to do something at that point. It's whether I got to wait more, maybe till 10 o'clock time frame, look for more short side. If things are showing that they're going to be dumping more, fading for the whole rest of the day too, adjusting to what the market's saying, or just be willing to let the stupid little algorithms and pre-markets or right away from market hours dip and rips go without me, because I obviously haven't been trading them effectively, and going for a more paper trade route. If I getting so angry that those dip and rips are working, then I got to paper trade myself into being able to actually trade them with real cash. I think I've forced myself into that situation where I haven't been training them effectively, and we got to take a different approach. We got to go back to the simulator, right, for what it's gonna do going forward. But that's pretty much it. 40-minute video here. Man, I can freaking talk up a storm, right? That was the month of September. This kind of concludes pretty much 1 month, or not 1 month, 1 year of my trading career since I started last year, that 2020 September month, where I was kind of in and out a little bit with maybe June, July, I think starting in August of getting a little bit more intensive in me wanting to do this one and looking at more resources, more opportunities, and get a little bit more into it. But I think September was definitely, and the data I say too that I have kind of started in September. So I'm kind of viewing that as my starting point in my career. So at the end of 1 year, we're down kind of like close to $3,000-ish almost in total, maybe like 2,500. And it's certainly the perspective again too, that certainly a lot more people have had far worse first years, first months, first anything of there's people on Wall Street equating it to like they're losing millions of dollars a day too, and keeping that perspective in my head of comparing it back to now my overall wealth and net worth of it's really nothing compared to that, and how kind of easy it is to get that money back to if it was so hard on that. But I'm out of that mode of trying to equate that money to what it is to, and I'm back in that I want to be striving more to getting that video game sensation that this is just kind of fake money. This is this is just a number on a scoreboard to try and rack up to, and understanding that it's going to come at a cost. And I want to be 100% going forward, that I need to be getting those numbers green. I need to get that score even higher. But I'm certainly fine with where I'm at right now. I'm not just absolutely beating my head against the window, or I'm frustrated with myself too. I've got to be willing to understand that I'm going to make mistakes. And I know the hardest person that's going to hurt me is myself. And if I continue to just destroy that and fill my head with thoughts of, oh, you suck and you're not a good trader and you're taking so many losses, then nobody else is going to be that push for me. Nobody else is going to be that motivator. It's got to be me with every single day too. Loving myself, loving what I'm doing as a market, loving just so many words to go into it. But it's exciting. And gosh, this far in the video, I got to thank every single one of you for listening. If me is listening to the future, you just got to know that wherever you are right now, think back to where I was, where we were at this point in time too, just every single asset of how we're living at home here, the blessings that we have too for the work that we do, for the parents that we have, for the family that surrounds us, for the support system that is also around us, the opportunities that we have for books and seminars and reading. Oh my gosh, every single facet. Be so incredibly thankful. I think that's all I got. I'm tapped out. Oh, that is month. We will see you guys next month. No trading for me on the day too, as I mentioned, for the 4th of October here. I took a nice little sleep in. Did not trade the morning session, but we will get after it tomorrow for the 5th. I thank you guys sincerely for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.